We're now being joined by Azubike Nwokoye. He's the programs manager, food and agriculture section or sector of Action Aid Nigeria. Thanks very much for joining us on Newsnight. I mean,
thank you.
Agric. That's like a swan song in Nigeria from the birth of this country. Yes, its potentials are enormous, but what we get from it is really nothing so much to write home about. Maybe only in the First Republic did we see Nigeria tower above the potential. 228 billion for 2023 agriculture budget. Is there anything to truly write home about here?
Yeah, just to, it's quite challenging in the sense that the agriculture sector is not supposed to be garbage in, garbage out. It requires a lot more. It requires adequate funding. This funding is just about 1.11%, not even up to 2% of the required 10% Maputo commitment. And moreover, if you put inflation, this money further loses about 39 billion naira if you do an analysis of the real value. So this is quite challenging, and the sector is also bugged with a lot of lack of and late releases, in the sense that agriculture is timely. It is not supposed to be treated like other sectors. There are things that if you are not able to do in March, April in the agriculture sector, you lose it. So the government needs to pay attention. I think the Ministry of Finance, the Budget Office of the Federation, and the presidency, the advisors of the president and the president need to understand how agriculture really works, in the sense that they need to put adequate resources, make it timely, and make it targeted to real priorities of the sector, because there are a lot of gaps. For instance, when you take our post-harvest losses alone, is 3.5 trillion naira annually. And by the time you divide it among all the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, it's about 94.5 billion estimated that every state and Federal Capital Territory is losing annually. So even if we don't do anything more strategic, if we focus on reducing our post-harvest losses, we'll have more jobs, more internally generated revenue. We've done some recent analysis that is showing that states are not playing their part. And some of the analysis we did is showing that if states put, some certain states, if they put only 15 billion in the agriculture sector and totally spend it completely, they will be adding more than for some, almost 30-something billion to their internally generated revenue. For some, as much as 50-something billion. And so you ask yourself, what are states doing? Why are they not having their own silos? Why are they not having their own storage facilities? Why are they waiting for federal government? Why are they not having their guaranteed minimum price to ensure that farmers have access to market, and so on and so forth? So we need to actually rethink if we want to grow as a country.
Too many questions you have raised there, and of course even agricultural business leaders have got more questions, especially if you look at the loss of crops due to heavy rains in this flooding season, and some have even saying the prices of food will go up. And this is a country that was already bedeviled with the talks of food insecurity. But you say what we have budgeted is not sufficient. So what should we be doing as a people who want to, grow in terms of agriculture, so that way Nigeria can grow all that we need to feed? Okay,
if we were going to achieve the 10% at the federal level, the budget should have been about 2-point-something trillion, because we have a national budget of about 20-point-something trillion. So it should have been 2-point-something trillion, and those expenses should be targeted strictly on some component of extension services. For instance, we did some analysis on the extension services sector. Farm demonstration, smallholder women farmers have access to only 5.26% of farm demonstration. It means that technology transfer is not really happening at the level of extension agents. Most times, extension is budgeted for, and operational costs like support for vehicles, transport allowance, training, retraining, transport allowance, and support is not retraining and is not provided to these extension agents. So even when government ends up owing them, let's assume they owe them, and they pay them maybe after 3 or 4 months of owing them, they have paid them for not doing any work, and they have wasted our commonwealth. So they need to provide them vehicles, they need to provide them motorcycles, they need to provide transport allowance, they need to provide training and retrain. They need to also employ more extension agents. I'm just using extension service to give an example.
I was just going to say, if extension services would be a kind of panacea to regenerate, the agricultural sector, guaranteeing increased productivity to, as a sine qua non to agricultural developments in the country.
Yeah, so extension is one of the fulcrum. You have access to credit, which has to also come in. Practically, smallholder women farmers, according to our data collected across the CSAs and FCT, is showing that they have access to less than 23% of credit available from the government channel. So more needs to be done along that. When you come to issues of losses, or maybe like, for instance, the flood that's happened, for instance, you find out that smallholder women farmers have access to only 4.7% to agricultural insurance. Wow. It is showing that across the country, let's assume people, based on the crop losses, you find out that it will be difficult for them because they don't have access to agricultural insurance. So it falls back to the government to provide every support. So we need to rethink about how we plan, how we strategically take charge of different components. In terms of processing facility, we are saying we are losing about 3.5 trillion naira annually from post-harvest losses. Smallholder women farmers have only 18% access to processing facilities, only about 16.60% to storage facilities. So
which is quite poor, especially looking at the fact that they make up 80% of the farmers we have in Nigeria.
So we need to actually rethink about our priorities, about getting our sector, because the agriculture sector can provide a number of needed jobs.
Absolutely.
Even for young people.
Absolutely. And of course, the 1.8% of the budgetary allocation for agriculture falls really short.
Yeah, 1.8 is last year. This year is 1.11. It has dropped further.
Right. Yes. Against the Maputo declaration.
Yes. Of 10% at least. Yes. Nigeria has to grow what she eats. But we'll have to say thank you so much to you, Azubike
Nwokoye. Yeah, he's the Programs Manager, Food and Agriculture of Action Aid. Thanks for coming to shed more light on this. Okay.